We've been following this series. I started with the purpose of determining what we can about what's going on in the Middle East, in Israel, and having to do with Gaza and so on. And we started out with, because we are believers, we started out with the Promised Land with Abraham, and we followed all the way through each phase of it. Some of it might have seemed like it was more information than you wanted, but it's hard to know what to leave out and what to put in. And a subject like this, we could go on for year after year after year and not have everything covered. But with that said, we're up to the Ottoman Empire this time. So I'm going to do a little bit of review in just a minute. But the Arabs and the Muslims who had come into the Promised Land and took it from the Byzantine Empire, basically in the 600s. They it went back and forth between many different hands. It changed hands more times than you can imagine until it got to the Ottoman Empire. And I wanted to land there. We were finishing up with the Roman Empire last week because it ended with the Byzantine Empire the land was taken from the Byzantine Empire by the Ottomans. So let's find out what we can learn about the Ottomans and what it has to do with today and who's in the Promised Land, who belongs there, who doesn't belong there, and so on. This gives you an idea. All this area here that's colored is at one time or another part of the Ottoman Empire. The dates here tell you roughly from each color when each part of it was taken over by the Ottomans. And this area here you see between 1512 and 1520 is when the area around the Promised Land was taken over by the Ottomans. With that said, I want to go back to the Abbasids in the 9th century. And the reason I did it because I wanted to show you during this time, about halfway between, when the Muslims came in and took over. If you look at the area here, this is where Israel is today. If you'll notice everything here, there's nothing here that says Israel. It has Syria. It has different names. It doesn't say Israel. It doesn't say Palestine. It was divided up several different ways over a several hundred years period of time, from the 600s up until we're talking about now into the 1500s, 1200s, 1500s, in that area. But the area changed back and forth over who was settled where and so on, and it changed names and called different names at different times. And the area itself was called the area of Palestine, like we are called the United States of America, but we're in North Carolina. We're in the Americas, but we're North America. So it's like it's the Americas is talking to Palestinians. The area of Palestine is more an area. It was never a country. It's an area that was on the map, and there's debate over where the name came from. Many say it was named that by the Roman Empire, and they named it that because they wanted to try to get it away from the Jewish identification as much as possible. And so they got the name after the Philistines. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, because none of us were living back then. Regardless of what it was, this area was called Palestine. But even during the Abbasids, when they had reigned in the 9th century, in the 800s, all through here is named different things. You had the cities. Some of the cities' names were the same, but the country, the areas, the divisions changed over all this period of time to different areas. But it was never a homogeneous name of any particular nation. So I want to do a couple of definitions before we get too far tonight. And one is a caliph. It's the chief Muslim civil and religious ruler, regarded as the successor of Muhammad. The caliph ruled in Baghdad until 1258, and then in Egypt until the Ottoman conquest in 1517. The title was then held by the Ottoman sultans until it was abolished in 1924 by Ataturk. Well, I won't go there. I've started to say something. We'll get there in a minute. Caliphate. You'll hear about caliphate. Caliphate is the office of the caliph or the land that the caliph rules. Within the Muslim people, there's a disagreement. You know, you've heard the Shiites and the Sunnis, or Shia and Sunnis. Well, there's others besides that, but they're the two main groups. But they disagree on the lineage from Muhammad through to the caliph, so they don't agree on the same caliphate or the same caliph. That they disagree with each other. You have a group called some people refer to as the Twelvers. They believe that the 12th Imam is alive today, and when he comes to rule, that's when you'll see all the end time things happen, and everything in the world will change, and it'll be completely under Muslim rule, and it'd be the end of the world as we know it. Is what this particular group. So when you say Muslim or Muslim, and you're talking about the caliphate, not every Muslim is going to be talking about the same thing that another Muslim is talking about, because they don't agree within themselves. So if they don't, that's like within the Christian faith. You're talking about the end times, and you're talking about you have you have the different groups, some post-tribulation, some pre-tribulation, some mid-tribulation rapture, some no rapture, some everything, all this that happened in the book of Revelation has already occurred, and some of them, everything has occurred in there except for the last couple of chapters. So just like we in the Christian world have different things when it comes to prophecies and the way we interpret certain scriptures, it's the same way with the nation, with Islam. And if we don't keep that in mind, we'll get confused when we hear them talking about different areas and different things that's going on. So anyway, I wanted you to know what a caliph was and what a caliphate was, so we know where to go from there. What happened in the Promised Land and who inhabited the land from the 7th century conquest of the land by the Muslims until the conquest by the Ottomans in 1517. Who inhabited that land? That was a long period of time. That was many years between that the Muslims first taking over in the 600s up until 1517, when the Ottomans took over this same area. Ottoman Empire rose before them, but they took over this area in about 1517. With that said, I want to go back, and we're going to, this is a review of something I did last week, because I want to do this to pull together where we were last week to where we are this week. And you'll see in about 637 or 638 is Jerusalem fell to the armies of the Muslims. The Jews are permitted to return after 568 years. Then we see another family takes control of the caliphate and moves the capital to Damascus. Then the Dome of the Rock is built on the Temple Mount. Then Theodore is appointed Patriarch of Jerusalem. Theodore, what is that? He's the Christian leader in Jerusalem. So we have Muslims in there, we have Jews in there, and we have Christians in there. And it's recognized in the histories as you follow through them. So you have a mix of people. Another group takes over. Civil war resulting in the Abbasid family seizing control of the caliphate. So they came in and they took the caliphate from the group before. They're all Muslims. War between the tribes of Palestine. So all the time there's wars going on in between all the different groups that are there, and one Muslim group fighting against another Muslim group. You have Jews fighting against Christians, and Christians fighting against Muslims, and Muslims and Jews together fighting against. So it's a kind of a period of turmoil. Patriarch of Jerusalem sends a mission to the Frankish king Charlemagne. The Jewish High Council, headed by Gaion, I guess is the way he says his name, moves from Tiberias to Jerusalem. Church of the Holy Sepulchre is repaired. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So you know that in 820 there was Christian influence there, because there was a church there and it had been damaged, so it was repaired in 820. In 937 you see rioting. Muslims burned down the Church of Resurrection and loot the Chapel of Golgotha. So Muslims, Christians, a Muslim Jewish mob torches the Church of Resurrection. So here you have Muslims and Jews together fighting against the Christians in the same area. So we have Muslims, Christians, and Jews and none of them get along. The Fatimid period, when they, the Shia Caliphate, self-proclaimed, if you will. Then you have Joseph II is appointed Patriarch of Jerusalem. He's a Christian leader. He's a Christian leader in Jerusalem at that particular time. That's in 978. In 1015, you have an earthquake. The Dome of the Rock collapses. 1032, renovations of the Dome of the Rock ordered by the Caliph at that particular time, and they're finished. And then 1033, Jerusalem city walls are rebuilt. They had been destroyed by the Romans. They had been rebuilt in 1033. The Seljuks invade Palestine. So you have another group that comes in and invades the lands you have there. 1093, Muslim and coast communities bar Christians from entering Palestine. 1095, in November, Pope Urban II launches the first Crusades. Okay, now, clarify something here. People talk about, atheists love to talk about how much bloodshed there has been in the name of Christianity over the years. And every time I've ever talked with any atheist, and we get in this conversation, first thing he said, how about the Crusades? And I say, okay, what were the Crusades about? How many Crusades were there? You know what their answer is? I don't know. All they've heard is the Crusades, bad, Christian people, bad, Crusade, bad, because they came in and killed these innocent Muslims. No. If you see through this, just these, there's a whole lot more history you could fill in here, but you can see where the Muslims came in and took the land from the Jews, and then took them from the Byzantine Empire, and then other Muslims came in and took it from these Muslims, and then Muslims come in and they burn down and tear down churches that the Christians have built in there. So then crusades start to come back in there to rebuild the churches and conquer the land. Were they always doing what was right and they're always wholesome and wonderful? No. But nobody is. I don't care if they're atheists or who they are. But anyway, this is when the Crusades began. 1096, 1099, the First Crusade and the establishment of the Catholic Kingdom of Jerusalem. 1099, the Crusade reached Jerusalem and besieges the city. July the 15th, Catholic soldiers take Jerusalem after difficult siege, killing nearly every inhabitant. So they wiped out a bunch of them. August the 12th, Crusaders defeat the Fatimids at the Battle of Ascalon. December 25th of 1100, the Kingdom of Jerusalem is established. So we've got Muslim from the Byzantine, Muslim against Muslim, Jew against Muslim, Muslim against Jew, Christians against this. So who was the rightful owner of this land at this time? According to God, Abraham's descendants were. According to the scripture, according to the covenant that he made with Abraham. But were they acting like they were supposed to? Why did they lose the land in the first place? Because they did not obey God. They did not follow what God said. So I'm not trying to make the Jews innocent in any of this. I'm just trying to show who was here, who inhabited this land, who should have been and who should not have been. The Latins repaired the walls of Jerusalem in 1116, 1124. Crusaders conquer Tyre, which is up to the north of where Israel is today. May the 1st, Saladin defeats the Crusaders. So here we go. Muslims defeated the Crusaders. October 2nd, Saladin captured Jerusalem from the Crusaders. 1189, 1192, Third Crusade led by the armies of Richard the Lionhearted. The 12th of July, Muslim garrison of Acre surrenders, and Richard has them all executed. If you see there on August the 20th, September the 2nd, Richard and Saladin sign a peace treaty of Jaffa, which is good for 3 years. Then later on, you see they sign another treaty that's good for 10 years. So here we have a peace treaty between the Crusaders and against the Muslims in this particular area. And in this truce, they restore Jerusalem, Nazareth, Bethlehem to the Christians' control in exchange for protection. So the Christians are the ones controlling these particular areas within the promised land that was promised to Abraham in the covenant that was made many, many, many years before. Let's go down to 1243. The Franks recovered Jerusalem. 1260, Egyptian Mamluks and the Mongols. Now we've got another group of people. The Mongols are coming in from the east, and they've come in and started attacking the land that's here. So now up to now we've had different groups of Muslims, we've had different groups of Christians, we've had the Jews, we've had all these different groups of people. Now, with all of this, now we're going to have some Mongols involved in it as well. And if you'll notice, this is the Mongolian Empire. It goes all the way back through where China is today, down in towards where Vietnam and so on down here in India. All this was the Genghis Khan and was it his grandson Kublai Khan? I don't think it was his son. I think it was his grandson. Anyway, the Khans, they conquered a big portion of the world at this particular time in this area, but one area that they could never quite conquer over there is, you see where it says Tyre and Alexandria back over here, that's Egypt. But you see, they never controlled that. They were never able to conquer and control the Promised Land. So the Mongols didn't get into the Promised Land with a solid footing. Okay, now that brings us to the Ottoman Empire. You got all the rest of it. We got that down. So now we'll go to the Ottoman Empire. These different colors, they just show where the column at different periods in history when the Ottomans took control over different areas. And down here is in the green color the acquisition between 512 and 520 by Selim I is when the Ottomans first took control of the area that we call the Promised Land. What did they call the land? Hang on. Osman I, not Donny Osmond and Marie, but this is Osman I, a leader of the Turkish tribe in Anatolia, founded the Ottoman Empire. The name is a derivative from his name, is where you get Ottoman from, because Uthman is what the Muslims, I don't know how they pronounce it, that's the way I pronounce it, but that's the way they do it. That's where you get the name for the Ottoman Empire, in case you're wondering, because Tommy said last week when I said, what are the Ottomans? He said, it's something you prop your feet on. Well, it's named after this particular leader. By 1517, Selim I's son, he brought Syria, Arabia, Palestine, and Egypt under Ottoman control. So the Ottomans are in this area. They're controlling this area. They are Muslims. The Ottoman Empire reached its peak between 520 and 566 during the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent. This period was marked by great power, stability, and wealth. He created a uniform system of laws and so on for the area. He's considered, in history, he was a great leader. Although he was Muslim, we don't particularly like a lot of the things that he did. He was a great leader, and he instituted a lot of change in the area, modernization, if you will, to a large degree. So, what regions, what part of the country did the Ottoman Empire control? This is not a complete list, but this is close. Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, Egypt, Hungary, Macedonia, Romania, Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria. So they controlled a vast area, a huge area. The Ottomans were known for their great achievements in art and in science. Had a lot of great literature. As one of the great literary centers of the world at that time was under the Ottoman Empire. You don't think that today with looking at the way that most of the Muslim countries are and how backwards most of them are. But at that particular time, they were, if you will, on the cutting edge of science and arts and math and all this kind of stuff. And much of it was because of Suleiman. And down at the bottom it says, some of the most popular forms of art included calligraphy, painting, poetry, textiles and carpet weaving, ceramics, and music. It was a pretty civilized place. Under Sultan Selim, a new policy. I like this one. See if you like this policy. he instituted a new policy of fratricide. And you can read what it says here, but what happened when you didn't want your brother to be appointed the sultan? Because if your brother was appointed the sultan, all of his brothers were locked up until he had his first son, and then you killed all the other brothers and all of their sons.
Locked the son in a tower and taught him ugly Muslim philosophy.
There you go. But so we look at all this achievements in art, in music, and everything else, and still within this same empire, you have something as barbaric as this, where what they're trying to do was they were controlling the bloodlines that make sure who was the next one, that it was legitimate heir, so you knew for sure it was legitimate heir because you killed everybody else. He had to be legitimate. He was the only one left. Most scholars agree that Ottoman Turk rulers were tolerant of other religions, which was true from everything I've read during the Ottoman Empire. They did not, of course, I've got it here somewhere probably. They taxed other people of other religions, but you could practice Christianity within this Ottoman Empire in different places, depending on which particular area it was. So they were religiously tolerant to some degree, or to varying degrees. 14th century system they created required conquered Christians to give up 20% of their male children to the state. The children were forced to convert to Islam and became slaves. So they weren't all good. That's in the 14th century. Now we're getting closer and closer to modern day. At the start of World War I, the Ottoman army entered, in 1914, they entered the war on the side of the Austro-Hungarians and the Germans. They entered the war on the wrong side. Instead of with Britain and France and eventually us, we got into it in 1917, and the war ended in 1918. Do you know when the war ended? Armistice. 11/11/11. It was 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918. So that's when the war ended. Anyway, the Ottomans were defeated in 1918. When any time in war through history, if a country conquers another country, who gets to make the rules? The ones that won. The winners get to make the decision because you don't have a choice. If you lose the war, they're going to be making the decisions. The Jews lost their opportunity to make the decisions because they did not follow God's covenants as they were supposed to, and they wound up losing their land. That doesn't mean that God changed his mind and he didn't make a promise to Abraham, because he said this land will belong to you, or to your descendants until the end of time, is basically what he told Abraham. So ever how you want to read that. They lost this, and in the armistice, the territories were divided up between Britain, France, Greece, and Russia. So the Ottoman Empire officially ended in 1922. We're getting now into the territory that's going to start framing where we are today. Won't get there tonight, but hopefully we'll next time. Under the Ottoman rule, the inhabitants of Palestine were Ottoman subjects. Those persons known later as Palestinians had no particular legal status under Ottoman rule. As such, a distinct Palestinian people did not exist at that time. The Palestinians constituted a sector of the larger Ottoman people. That's important. The Ottoman Turkish Empire, 1519 to 1917. After a number of consecutive Muslim caliphate rulers, the Palestine came under control of the Ottoman Empire. For the Ottomans, the Turks, The area was merely an unimportant outpost. It was malaria-ridden. It was wasteland. There was not much of anything there. Think about it. Wars and fighting had been going back and forth for hundreds and hundreds of years. What could be left? And I've got some quotes of some people who visited the area back in like the 19th century, and here's some of them. The land in Palestine was lacking in people to till its fertile soil. That was Thomas Shaw, a British archaeologist. Palestine is a ruined and desolate land. Count Constantin Francois Volney, French author and historian. The country is in a considerable degree empty of inhabitants, and therefore its greatest need is a body of population. James Finn, British consul, I should say. Above all other countries in the world, Palestine is now a land of ruins. In Judea, it is hardly an exaggeration to say that for miles and miles there is no appearance of present life or habitation. Cook's Tourist Handbook, that was in 1876. You'll like this one. This was Mark Twain upon visiting the area. A desolation is here that not even imagination can grace. With the pomp of life and action, we never saw a human being on the whole route. So this area was pretty much at this particular time, but this was just before the end of the Ottoman Empire. This place had become pretty much desolate. It had become wasteland to a large degree. It was not a very habitable place to be at that time. When the Ottomans gained control of the area in 1517, the sparse population consisted of, who did it consist of? Who was living there? Had Jews, and it tells where they came from. Had Muslims that were there, and they'd been fighting back and forth. Had Samaritans, had Christians, had all these groups of people were there, at different time, different numbers. Different ones had majorities in different areas, but all this area for hundreds of years, it was in a period of flux, if you will, back and forth between different groups. But there never was a homogeneous group of people here to form a nation of any kind, even the nation of Israel. It was just a desolate place. Now I'm going to read a quote. Now I want you to pay particular attention to this quote, and then I'll show you who said this, who wrote this. There are no differences between Jordanians, Palestinians, Syrians, and Lebanese. We are all part of one nation. It is only for political reasons that we carefully underline our Palestinian identity. Yes, the existence of a separate Palestinian identity serves only tactical purposes. The founding of a Palestinian state is a new tool in the continuing battle against Israel. Now, who said that? He was the department leader of the Palestinian Liberation Organization in 1977, is who said that. Palestinian Liberation Organization, 1977. We all can remember 1977. That's when he said that. So what did he say? Let's look at this again. There are no differences between Jordanians, Palestinians, Syrians, and Lebanese. Now, this is a Palestinian, quote, Palestinian of the Palestinian Liberation Organization saying this. We are all part of one nation. It is only for political reasons that we are carefully underlining our Palestinian identity. Yes, the existence of a separate Palestinian identity serves only tactical purposes. The founding of a Palestinian state is a new tool in the continuing battle against Israel. Is that as plain as you can get? Randy didn't say that. I didn't make that up. You can look it up yourself. That's who said it. 1881, a small number of Jews were also allowed in. I wanted to point this out because you've heard the Rothschilds, right? Edmund James de Rothschild bought land from the absentee Turkish Lebanese, and other landlords, land which was of little use to them as it had become barren and malaria ridden. Using modern farming methods, the Jews began to work the barren land and, as Churchill said, make the desert bloom. So he bought land in this particular area that was considered no good and worthless by anybody, so they were more than glad to sell him this land. Was this all of what Israel is today? No, but this is a small portion of the land. He bought it, and they took the land that was desolate and went in with modern farming techniques and turned it into a profitable property land, a piece of land where they could grow food. The Ottoman Empire ended in 1922. At the start of World War I, the Ottoman Empire was already in decline. The Ottoman army entered the war in 1914, on the side of the Central Powers, which we talked about, and was defeated. That's the important thing. And was defeated in October 1918. Following the armistice, most Ottoman territories were divided between Britain, France, Greece, and Russia. So who was given control over these areas? That was the Ottoman Empire. Britain, France, Greece, and Russia. So now, 1920, the League of Nations allocated what is now Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, and Jordan to the British Mandate. Here's what it said. This is from the document. Recognition has hereby been given to the historical connection of the Jewish people with Palestine and to the grounds for reconstructing their national home. The administration of Palestine, while ensuring that the rights and position of other sections of the population are not prejudiced, shall facilitate Jewish immigration under suitable conditions and shall encourage, in cooperation with the Jewish agency referred to in Article 4, close settlement by Jews on the land, including state lands and wastelands not required for public purposes. And you can look that up in the League of Nations Mandate for Palestine, Article 6, if you want to know what that says. That's pretty clear what has occurred in this area in the time that we're talking about tonight. The Ottomans joined in a war on the wrong side. They lost, and because of that, their territory was divided up in mandates under the armistice to these different countries, and Britain was the one that wound up in control of the area that we call Israel today. And I'll show you part of the British Mandate of Palestine. You can see that's the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River, the Dead Sea. This is where Israel is today. This is where Jordan is today. So all of this territory was given to the British for them to manage, for them to decide what to do with, for them to decide how to handle it. You can see from the mandate that was given before and the armistice that are read that it was created. There was supposed to be a place created according to the world organization that had defeated the Germans at this time and the Ottomans, that they were supposed to create a land here, a homeland for the Jews. Who was living in this land at this time? There were Jews, there was Muslims, there was Christians, there was probably heathens. There were all kinds of people that lived in this area. There was not a homogeneous group of people, and there was no nation here. It was part of the Ottoman Empire. And after they fell, after they were conquered in 1918 and signed the peace accord, the armistice of that particular day, when they signed that, they signed away their control to what was left of the Ottoman Empire, and it went under the control of the British. Any questions?